Hey everyone, welcome to Geek Rant. It's Greg here again on the channel with Toby, and today we're going to be talking about the 1988 classic Willow. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm very pleased to be with you today because I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite childhood films and what I feel is one of the most underrated fantasy movies ever made. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
that's quite
I
a
think
statement, isn't it?
I think it's got a bit of a cult following now, isn't it?
Yes, it
You know,
has. It has.
Otherwise they wouldn't have revived it for the new series
No, I
that
know.
they've been doing. So,
Exactly. I love any excuse to watch this film again. This is
yeah, it's
I
fantastic.
yeah, it is it's got
Mm,
for me, it's kind of one of those films that's kind of it's made exactly the right time for me, and the type of effects, they were
yeah,
just starting to get into CGI,
yep,
but there was still a lot of practical effects.
yeah,
Um, the whole storyline I enjoy, and the adventure and all that sort of thing.
yeah,
It's just such a good family film as well.
yeah. Definitely, it's very gun ho. We can get into all of that as well when we talk about
Yeah,
the storyline.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the special effects came out of Industrial Light and Magic at the
That's right.
time,
Yeah.
and we
You've
had
got some Phil Tippett stuff, with the stop
absolutely.
motion and
Yeah,
things like that, which is always enjoyable.
yeah,
But then, like you say, they were on the edge of getting into more CGI work,
yeah,
and they created this morphing technology as well, didn't
yeah.
they, for the series?
Dennis
So
Moran, he
yeah,
was a bit of a pioneer in that area, kind of
yes,
recognized, the future. And the effect they use in the film, they then go on to use in like T2 and
yeah,
all those big blockbusters. So this was like the early stuff, but it had to be
yes,
done. And I think the way they
yeah.
did it was really effective,
It
actually.
was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so if any of you, if you've not seen Willow before, this is a story about well, Warwick Davis stars as
Yeah.
Willow Wolfgood, and he is a farmer who dreams of being a magician or a powerful
Yeah.
wizard. And
Living
he's
in a little village in a
living
forest.
in a little village in a forest. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's quite idyllic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's slightly hobbity, in that sense, but
Yeah.
I'm not
Or
phased by that.
Ewoky in a way.
Yes, Ewokey, yes.
Yeah.
Well, obviously Warwick Davis had been in Empire Strikes, no,
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi. Get that
That's
right, Greg.
Wicket.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that George Lucas had supported him as a future star, and come up with this concept of
Yeah.
producing a film for him. So,
Yeah. He was
um,
12 at the time as well.
yeah,
So
yes,
Warwick Davis,
yeah,
he must have made an impression.
yes,
Because after they shot the film, Lucas spoke to Davis and his mother,
mm,
saying that he had plans for them. So, wow,
yeah.
that
Well,
must have been.
in Empire Strikes Back,
Mm,
originally it was going to be Kenny Baker who was going to play that role,
right.
and he was unwell, and it was kind of a bit of a last minute Warwick Davis step in, and
Mm,
he stepped in and took on the Wicket role,
yeah.
that was interacting
Yeah.
with
Return
Princess
of the Jedi.
Leia. Yeah,
All those.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was kind of so yeah, and also, I mean, like you say, he was only 12 then, but he was only 17 when he did this film.
Yeah. 17
And
and 18, I think. I think it goes. I think.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. When it came out, I think he was 8. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah. So it was quite interesting, wasn't it, that he was so young? I never sort of clocked it that he was 17 when I sort of watched this. He looks obviously young, but I thought he was in his
Yeah.
20s or something. But then when you think about the timeline, it's like, yeah, surely he was quite young, wasn't he? So I thought he did quite well to be the lead in a movie at such a young age.
And actually, he did get some sympathetic reviews at the time, saying that
Yeah,
his performance was quite good.
yeah,
There are some scenes in it where you can see the rawness of his experience coming
yeah,
through. You
yeah.
know, and I think he's naturally talented, so
Yeah.
that natural talent shines in particular
Hmm.
moments in the film. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. the whole basis of the story of this film is set around trying to protect this baby that's been born from the evil queen Bavmorda.
Alora Dannon.
Laura Dannon. And like any good film, there's a prophecy, and it's prophesied that there will be a baby that is born, and she will go to and destroy Queen Bavmorda and end her rule over the kingdom.
Yeah.
And the baby is born in Queen Bavmorda's sort of, I don't know what it is, like a prison, isn't it? Like,
it's like a dungeon.
She captures all the pregnant women, doesn't she, around, and she sticks them in this dungeon, which is a very, bloody hell. And the baby's born, and we see it because it's got a little, sort of birth
infinity sign on its arm.
It is, yeah. Is she one of the Infinity Stones?
Yeah, could be. There's a definite tie in there. Well, Disney own it, so you never know.
Yeah, they're going to change that for the series.
Yeah.
But for me, one of the great heroes of this film was the washerwoman who takes the baby and escapes, and gets away and is hunted down by these dogs. And she does the old thing. She puts the baby on a bit like Moses, puts the baby on a bed of reeds and sends it down the river. And this is where it comes to Willow. And
and she gets devoured by the death dogs at the side of the river, by the way.
I know. She really gets, there's that bit, isn't there, where she jump on her.
It's a children's film. It's a family children's film.
Yes.
And it's already, we've seen a dungeon, we've seen women hunted down and chained and locked up and then suddenly one of their maids gets devoured by a death dog. This is a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's Willow's kids, isn't it? Mims and I can't think, Rannon, I think it's Rannon. Who find the baby in the river, and they take the baby in, and obviously they don't know what to do with it.
But I think at this point you have to pause and think to yourself, am I taken in by cuteness? If you don't like cuteness at this stage, then there are certain parts of this film which aren't going to appeal to you, because you get cutaways to the baby all the time, which I find hilarious. It's to get this baby to do so many pauses. They must have filmed it for hours.
I know. There were twins. There was actually twins that played the role. Yeah.
Was it?
It was twins.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah. And the Willow's kids, they're just so cute.
They are cute, aren't they? And they perform pretty well, don't they? With the sort of things they have to do.
Yeah.
And it does always make me laugh that when you see the baby, it's got they put a wig on it. They put a big, ginger, curly, massive hair. It's like 2-week-old baby's got like a full head of hair. It's like,
well, I know some babies come out with hair, and it's a bit weird, but
No, but this was excessive.
Yeah, it was excessive. There's actually a lovely shot of Ron Howard, who's directing the film.
Yes.
At the end, there's a shot of the cast, and you see Ron Howard standing in the back, and he's holding Willow's daughter in his arms. It's obviously got a lot of affection for that little one. So that was very cute.
Yeah. So this is where we sort of see a bit of Willow's backstory, isn't it? His life. He's a farmer. There's a really good character in there called Burgle Cut, who is brilliant. Always he is really good in this guy, and Mark Northover his name, and that whole dynamic with Willow, his arguments with him, I liked all that. I
he's very blustery, isn't he?
Yes.
Obviously Ron Howard said just go for it. Just ham it up, and he does, and it's brilliant.
That's another thing. If you like a little bit of hamminess and a little bit of silliness, you're going to be quids in with this one.
It's fantasy. This is a fun family fantasy. You got to buy into it straight away, otherwise you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah. And we see them go to a fair, don't they, where Willow tries to become the apprentice of the the wizard. Is he a wizard?
Something an apprentice
High-Alwyn.
wizard.
High-Alwyn.
Yeah, that played by Billy Barty, who is a bit of a legend.
He is, isn't he?
He goes on to play Guildo in Masters of the Universe.
Masters of the Universe, yeah.
Which is a great part.
Full prosthetic though, isn't it? He has a whole massive, so you don't.
We'll have to review that one. We must do that one.
That would be a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right. His voice. Oh, what a voice that man had. That was just amazing. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
and I think at that point it actually shows, that Willow knows the answer to his riddle. The riddle of which finger is the most, and he should choose his own, and he doesn't think to, and doesn't get the job. But it's the thing about him having confidence in himself, isn't it? The story of someone who's small and you think is not going to be powerful, that they can still be powerful. That's very much a theme,
I mean,
isn't it?
And we haven't actually mentioned this, have we? That they're all dwarves,
That's right. They're all dwarves,
and they're all short people. This is they had to pull a cast of 200 short people from within the UK.
Yes,
and they were saying how difficult it was. It took them ages, and obviously most of them aren't actors.
No.
So. There was a lot of complications, and they had to really kind of organize them, and it was really tough. But not a scene you will ever see again in any film, I should imagine.
No, probably not.
No,
you're right. I think that is the highest amount, isn't it, that they've used of? But that's So I mean, that's pretty much one of the themes, isn't it? A bit like, and there's a little bit Lord of the Ringsy. A small person can, do great things, but who cares? I'm not too worried about that sort of thing.
No, exactly.
And so during this, the dogs attack again, don't they? They come into the village. Old Vonkar, the old sturdy, I like Vonkar as well.
Yeah, he's good.
He kills one of the dog creatures. And they realize they've got to do something with this baby. He goes to the council, the town all are like, throw him in the pit, and he's all a bit sort of scared of it, but then he brings the baby forward, and then a little group of them take the baby to a crossroads where they will see daikinis, which are just the sort of humans of the
big people.
The other thing you really is sort of, and it doesn't really affect me, but you don't really get a sense of what the world's called,
No.
where all the cities and things like that. There's a few names of things, but there's and to be honest, I don't think it needs it. It's so fine, isn't it, that you're just in this moment. I suppose that's the way it would be, wouldn't it?
They show a few scenes, don't they? They get head off on their quest. They show some lands, and they show some waterfalls and some mountains and some some strange places. And in fact, I think that some of this was shot in New Zealand. So this is like the first film that really started to use the big landscapes of New Zealand. It sort of set that trend, and I think that film producers look back on that now and as the first point when people realized how good New Zealand is to shoot in. So,
yes, there was a lot of mountains. There's a lot of different scenery, isn't there? There's some snow sort of stuff. There's some like forests and plains, and
they shoot in Wales as well.
So
they definitely get around. There's quite a few places that they film in.
Absolutely. And there at these crossroads, they meet Mad Mardigan, who is
Val
Kilmer. and this was just a perfect role for him, I thought. I really thought he played this so well. I think there was quite a bit of spontaneity from him. The lines were like you said, I think Ron Howard let them have a bit of freedom to
he improvised a lot of his lines, apparently.
And he's in a cage, isn't he? He's suspended in a cage, and then you see a whole great big army come by, and you meet one of the other characters in there, Eric, or who is a friend of Mad Mardigan, but he won't release him because he knows that he's
a thief and a brigand.
Exactly. So you get a real, the characters are real, aren't they? They do feel fleshed out and like they're got their, and there's a lot of these little bickering arguments, isn't there, which is some of the better stuff, isn't it, with Willow and Mad Mardigan. The best stuff is when those two are bickering together and trying to get out of the situation, So I really enjoyed that. That was
it's pretty clear at this point that Mad Mardigan's charm is going to be one of the central focuses now. But for the film, he leads it. It becomes a Val Kilmer film at this point. Really, it sort of does, doesn't it?
He takes the baby off, doesn't he? And then I've completely missed a whole step of the whole film. As they're traveling out, you're just him and Migosh. They get captured by brownies, don't they?
Yes.
And they then meet Shalindria, who is a sort of
a spirit almost. It's kind of like
she's like a spirit character, isn't she?
Yeah.
And she gives them a magical wand and tells them that they've got to go and find Finn Rizal, who's been banished to an island. And so that's when they head off and try and that's the sort of thing.
Well, we have the brownies now, don't we?
Yes.
Now this is potentially for me the weakest part of the film, the brownies,
right?
But they are light entertainment. Now I think it's something about the fact that they decided to do French accents that is largely what irritates me about this whole. I don't know why they're stupid little voices that they've sped up. And the part of the problem is, right, I've seen these two actors. Yeah, they're American. Yeah. Okay. And they're doing this stupid French accent, and it doesn't pay off for me. I can't get it. I can understand why they would introduce it. And unfortunately they use
Kevin Pollak is quite a good actor, isn't he?
They're using But I mean they're blue screened in a lot of the time, and for me the edge of the blue screen doesn't quite work on the new
that special effect
version.
Is slightly dodgy, isn't it?
It is slightly, and it's a shame. It just takes away. On some level, it could just been another character that they introduced rather than have to go to all this effort to put these two little brownies in. But I don't mind that. It's not the end of the world or anything.
No,
I
thought they fitted quite well with the whole ethos of the world. And I think they created another, because you want it to be fantasy. You want to somewhere to reinforce that it's a fantasy film. And I think these tiny little people were a part of their way of sort of making it seem more fanciful, Yeah. They had some good moments in it, I thought.
And I think they could have kept it to those. We sort of go back to them every now and again, sort of appearing from beneath a cloak when you don't really need to see that all the time. I think
that's true.
I think that they're fine in there.
But do you think they did that because they would have said, well, they've all ridden off, where are the brownies now? I think they would.
You see, unfortunately they have to keep doing it to keep them with them. But really They occasionally just tell we're here.
We're here.
Okay, we don't need you.
They've travelled about 10 miles, which is probably about 1,000 miles to them. You know what I mean? It's like in a day.
I think it does. It breaks some of that fantasy barrier. That the credibility of fantasies. You kind of you have to let go to believe in the fantasy. But with these little guys, it's harder to do that in my mind. But that's my only detraction from the film. I feel.
So I mean Val Kilmer goes off with the baby, doesn't he? But then he gets stolen, doesn't it? And that's where they met. That's where they meet the brownies, because the brownies have stolen it. That's right. I got that bit wrong. Sorry.
Yes.
And and they get captured. They get the wand. They're told go to Finn Rizal, and so they're heading out. They come to another little sort of settlement, don't they? When it's raining, he needs to go inside, and then they meet Mad Mardigan again, and this. He's already hooked up with some woman, isn't he? Who's married, and
the biggest guy in the tavern.
Her husband.
What's that one? What do they call him?
I so love that bit. Just it's such terrible humor. I love it because it's kind of like he comes in. And Val Kilmer's dressed up as a woman, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, Hilda. Oh, she's nice. Hi, Hilda. And his wife's standing there. He's just hitting onto this woman, like,
it's a little bit of panto, isn't it? In a moment, it's a little bit of panto, and it's quite hilarious. The way they dressed him up with those big fake boobs. He looked funny, but Yeah, that's Val Kilmer carrying the scene off. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of actors wouldn't have been able to carry that off, but
Yeah.
he did very successfully.
Mm.
And then it rolls out into
doesn't it?
into the pub, the tavern where Willow has taken shelter because it's raining and everything.
Yeah.
And then the guards turn up, don't they?
They do. Yeah. And Saoirse. So we meet Saoirse, don't we, properly here? Joanna Wally.
Yeah, Joanna Wally Kilmer in the end.
I know. Yeah, they met on this film, didn't they? And they end up and you can see there's some real chemistry between them, can't you? I think that's one of the good things about this. They actually did have some chemistry between them, you know.
Yeah. She's completely hypnotized him from the beginning, even though I think I mean, even though the character's not meant to be hypnotized at this point, you can see that there's this chemistry between
an attraction.
Them. Yeah, there's a really funny interview with Val Kilmer where his humor can be very dry sometimes. But he says in this interview, there was a scene where I had to kiss Joanna and I couldn't remember my lines afterwards, so we had to keep doing the scene over and over again.
Brilliant.
You can imagine. So, I mean, you're seeing Val Kilmer as Val Kilmer. This is, Mad Mardigan. He just plays himself.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, when an actor can be a bit more like themselves, I think that really helps the whole thing, doesn't it? He was really good in this. I know he's had a reputation in the past, hasn't he, for not being that good to work with and difficult on set and that sort of thing. But
and when he plays a serious role, it doesn't come across seriously. That's the problem. No. They put him in a serious role, but he's just not as good at those.
No, and this was perfect for him. He's good at the action stuff as well. I mean, there's a bit of action there. They managed to get away, don't they? They're all riding on horses. And
he actually gets injured in the filming. He got injured when he fell down the cage at the beginning part of the film, and he hurt his leg, and he had a limp then for the whole film afterwards. He has to hide it. Yeah.
Oh god.
But Warwick Davis did a lot of his own stunts as well. Incidentally, so it was pretty hardcore. There's a sequence where they were sliding down the shield, and they do it 15 times. And Warwick Davis said in an interview afterwards that he was terrified. He was on the edge of losing it. Yeah, they put through a lot of rigor on this film. It's hardcore.
It looks pretty real, doesn't it? It looks like they've done a lot of the stuff. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of riding horses. There's a bit where they're trying to get away, they're being chased, there's some good fighting. The action sequences are all pretty good, aren't they?
And the music is brilliant as well.
Yes, I mean, I was going to talk about that later,
we'll talk about that afterwards.
I mean,
but all this time the music's stirring,
really good, really good. Absolutely. And so it basically kind of they manage to escape again, don't they, and get to the island where Finn Rizal is. So they have to get in a boat and go across. And
that's interesting as well.
I think you'd mentioned before in our previous thing that there was a deleted scene.
Yeah, and it's quite a lengthy scene. And so basically, there's a boy who is in that little deserted village in the water. And he's been put there to stop people getting to the island, because we see Willow get to the island very easily where Finn Rizal is, and the boy says, he warns him off, I believe so, and then he changes into a fish in the water and attacks Willow as he's trying to get across in his boat. And now they cut this scene for a couple of reasons. Run time, but also the mechanical nature of the fish didn't quite work on screen, and they didn't like it. But
you thought it looked pretty crap.
They have put it into the new series.
Excellent.
So we'll see the reference there when that comes out.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, and a shame they missed out. But then if it looked really dodgy, that would have had an impact on the film,
it was fine not to have that in. It's a little bit of legend around the film, which is quite nice.
And then when he gets to the island, when Willow gets across to the island, he finds that Finn Rizal is actually a muskrat. Is that what it's called? Something like that.
A possum or something like that.
A possum or something. It's some sort of rodent-y thing. And she sort of explains she's been transformed by Badmora and needs help changing back, basically. soon discovers that Willow is not a wizard, he's a farmer. So she has to try and train him throughout the film. And I think this was a good touch as well, of him learning how to use, a few bits of
learning the words,
learning the words and that.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
that was good. Because he's already got a little bit of an apprenticeship, hasn't he, with tricks and magic and stuff like that. And then Patricia Hayes is
tricks.
But he's got an art to he's practiced and thought about it. And Patricia Hayes, who plays Finn Rizal, she's that voice, Willow, that kind of like that voice. She's always talking to him. You can do it, Willow. Very good.
So he brings Finn Rizal back across, but as soon as he gets back across, the baddies are on him again. Sorcerer's there. She captures them. There's a bit more banter between her and Val Kilmer, where she kicks him and he's like, "Oh, I want to break your leg," and the sexual tension is really mounting. And they get taken to a snowy camp. It's all on these mountains.
Yeah, they're heading up the mountains.
Heading back to Bad Morda to take the child. They got the child now. And then the brownies. Now you see, the brownies are useful because they turn up. There's some key things that they do in this film that
a couple of things
help change the whole aspect of it. So they help pick the lock, but at that point when they're trying to pick the lock, Val Kilmer says, "Get off! I'll do it," and that's when they get the old love potion out and they whack him with
the love powder.
Whack him in the face.
It's like fairy dust, isn't it? It's fairy dust.
Yeah. And so they manage to get out, and this is where they go to try and get the baby because it's in with Sorcerer. And Val Kilmer quite, sort of, I'm good at this sort of stuff.
There's a little bit of inconsistency here, though, isn't there? Because he gets smacked in the face, with the powder, and they say whoever they then see next you're going to fall in love with. But he looks at the baby, he looks at the brownies, he looks at Willow.
The baby, is he?
Well, I know. Well, the other one falls in love with a cat, doesn't he? So I mean, But obviously, this is where
they're brownies, though. They're brownies.
But it is. But when he comes through into that tent, as you were saying, he sees Sorcerer lying there. Oh my God, she looks beautiful.
I know.
He could have been. He could have done that anyway without the love powder.
He didn't need the love potion, really, did he?
I know.
It would have been, But
justified falling in love with her then.
It gives them that excuse to go and spout some poetry to her.
It's the best scene in the film, isn't it?
It is the best scene in the film. It is brilliant. It is a really good film.
She jumps up with a dagger, pointing at his gut.
And
then he's saying, I love you, and he's like, he
the
does
sun, the moon, and
he says, and she says, I'm gonna kill you. He says, better die, and then he gives some
death
some
just
poetry.
makes the love trivial, and all that sort of thing,
stuff like that,
and she's
hilarious.
Suddenly in a spell, isn't she? But then you see that Willow has snuck in, taken the baby, and she's like, you've tricked me. And just as he grabs a sword, doesn't he? And he sort of hits the tent to bring the tent down. He grabs hold of it, doesn't he? And gives her a kiss. And there's that moment where he cuts through the thing and she's like looking at him and there's looking at her.
I reckon he added that in there. Do you reckon that's improvised? I reckon he just grabbed her and kissed her. Probably.
Yeah, probably. Don't blame him.
No.
And that's where you like you were talking about with the shield, he cuts out, doesn't he, and kills a few guards with the
and we get the line from Willow, say it.
You are great.
Because Willow's watching.
He's like, and you see him just go, and I thought Val Kilmer did it pretty well. I could imagine being a swordsman. Sometimes you see people, Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, I really thought Viggo Mortensen, sometimes there was a bit where they first get attacked by the ring wraiths when they're in that camp at night, And there's a bit, his sword fighting there looked really rubbish, you know. And I was like, oh, that always sticks out of my mind, you know, how bad that was. But there's some good sword play, and then they jump on the shield, don't they? And they're off.
Yeah.
And old Mad Martin's going, oh, Saoirse, and she's like looking at him like, oh, don't go.
Hypnotized. Yeah.
And then they get chased. There's a lot more chasing down the snow.
That sequence where they get put for the rigger.
and another really silly bit, which I thought, again, this is just so stupid, but I actually quite like it because it's so silly, is the bit where you see Mad Martin fall off the back of the shield and then he's rolling down the hill.
Yeah.
And then about 2 minutes later, you see Willow go into the bit, and then you turn around and you see a massive, like, circular snow thing. It's like 10 foot wide, and he's in the middle.
Snow wheel with his legs sticking out. Yeah, that is potentially the hammiest bit in the film.
Yeah.
But I did laugh my head off when I saw that.
I know, it really didn't bother me at all. I was like, that's quite funny, you know. And so, but I think that does also help him snap him out of his love potion bit, because he jumps out and he's like, oh, what the hell? He's like, you know, what happened? And he's like, oh, you spouting poetry.
Willow has a real go at him, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's the good thing about their relationship, isn't it? You know, and funnily enough, at that little village is Eric and some of his men, and
hiding from, because they've just lost the battle.
That's right. So they go and hide, don't they? Saoirse comes in. She finds the little passage down there. She comes down, and they grab her. And this is the bit where he can take her off as a hostage to escape.
Spend a bit of time with her on the back of a horse.
This is it. And they go off to...
they question each other's lines, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, they're questioning each other. Did you really say that? Did I say that? You know, and they're like, did you mean that? You know?
Yeah, and then when he says, when it kind of went away, she was like, it went away? What? So that's where she punches him, doesn't she? And she gets off the horse, and, you know.
Yeah.
But then they make it to this castle, don't they? Tina's Lewin or something. It's
something like that, yeah.
And expecting there to be an army, because he's been sort of told that there's an army there. But when they get there, they see all these people encased in some sort of stone or glass or very strange sort of thing, completely deserted apart from some trolls. There's actually another deleted scene here that I thought was quite interesting. That in one of the stones is Saoirse's dad, and he was the old king, you know, who's got encased in some.
I haven't actually heard that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, no, it is, and you see him right at the end. So when at the very end, you see them all, everybody rode up, and she's there with her locks, and she's got the baby. Standing next to her is her father, and I think they've brought him back to.
They've freed him.
Yeah. So that's one tool.
Yeah, those
cut that bit out where Saoirse looks at the thing when she goes to the castle. She looks at the actual him and is like, father, you know, and
wow. But those figures in the glass, those figures in the glass, they sort of disappear, don't they, during the battle sequences?
They don't seem much around, do they? No, exactly.
Exactly. You don't see those again, really. They're everywhere when you go in. You can't walk for not seeing any, and then suddenly the battle commences, which is hilarious but great.
Well, I know that is brilliant. Val Kilmer gets there, and he's like, "What the hell? Why was I listening to you?" And in the background, they see, don't they, the army from Saoirse and General Kale. Pat Roach, this big guy, isn't he? He's huge. He's huge, isn't he? Yeah. And he's got a great skull helmet, you know. You see them riding, and so Val Kilmer quickly closes the gates and puts them, you know, just as they're coming up. And as they start to cut a tree down to battering ram the gates down, Val Kilmer's getting himself all prepared, isn't he? And he's sort of setting up crossbows. You know,
well, he's gone off. He's like, this is hopeless. He's gone into the castle, and he's found this armory.
Yes, that's right.
And he's like, oh, excellent. And there in like a it's like some armor in some light in a what's it
like a glowing beam of light.
Yeah.
It's very sort of, but he puts it on, doesn't he? And then when he comes out and he's got the helmet on, I mean, I just like, who designed this? That is
terrible.
just that looks so
chainmail over the
bit that comes
helmet
down
at the top.
And it looks so rubbish, didn't it? It just really
it did
bad,
terrible. Yeah.
So, but then he comes out and goes, Willow, mount that.
He's rigged up loads of traps all around the place, like bear traps and crossbows lined up on things, and they've got catapults.
Meanwhile, we see Willow has gone off to put Laura Dannon somewhere safe, and some trolls attack him, don't he? And this is an important bit, isn't it? He uses the wand, doesn't he? And says one of the words that Razel's taught him, and he turns it into some sort of gooey thing that he kicks off the rampart.
Like a creature. Two heads come out of this gluey globe.
And he kicks it, doesn't it? It goes down into a water thing down, but it starts to bubble. I always love it when they have that sort of bubbly, sort of like, something's coming, And just as they're breaking down the gates, Val Kilmer's doing a big sword swinging, and suddenly this creature comes up behind him, and everyone's like, whoa, and he's like, hey, pretty cool,
because he thinks that they're scared of him.
It's so but it's silly, not. But it's brilliant.
And we get this creature come out, designed by Phil Tippett, and it's got these two heads. Now for me, it's an interesting, I mean, just at a glance across the design here, the actual creature itself for me wasn't of the greatest design. The heads very peculiar in their shape. I think he probably would have been better off going for something a bit more conventional, because let's face it, it's just a standard sort of fantasy film, but they've got these very strange looking creatures, haven't they? These two heads that come up.
Yeah, but then they're so memorable. They're so memorable as strange creatures.
Memorable as being strangely kind of bad.
He transformed a troll. He transformed a troll into something completely unknown. Didn't he? So
the trolls were very different and kind of creepy. I remember at the time being sort of scared of them. They were quite. They're kind of ape-like, aren't they? In a way, they're kind of
They were probably the worst bit for me. The trolls. I didn't like the design of the trolls particularly.
No, the costumes didn't look very good, did they?
Pretty rubbish, didn't they?
Yeah, they were pretty rubbish.
That was one of the worst bits.
And the CGI then climbing across the building, it looks quite dodgy. The way they do that, but they were at the time when I remember watching it and thinking, they're quite terrifying. Actually, they're quite scary. The kind of the noise they made was quite. And when you think about trolls from history, they're quite. I mean, trolls generally aren't hairy like that. No, so whatever reason they came up with that,
they're normally quite big, and normally quite got like big noses and big sort of features and just a bit dense, aren't they? But it's a minor thing. So
it was interesting to see that design, and I think that's part of the thing that people look at it with a little bit of question. Why?
Maybe it was a bit of an odd. Sequence. It is an odd creature, but then again, it's so memorable because it is odd. I remember it very well. The design of it and the way it sort of moved and its head, but I suppose it's got someone's hand in it going,
Well, no, this is stop motion, isn't it?
I think it's some sort of different process.
They use a mechanical structure, but they stop motion it.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So rather than a clay structure, it's actually something they've made, but they do use stop motion.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I think at that time, with 1988, I think everybody's a little bit tired of that quality of stop motion, or that kind of sort of beast. I think everybody's sort of ready for something new. And those, I think that does sort of date it a bit, doesn't it? Seeing that
a little bit, I mean, the rest of it holds up pretty well. There's just a few scenes like that, isn't there, where you think, that does look a bit dated.
Right, they're in this impossible task, Val Kilmer versus the world, in the castle, fighting away. But there's one point, isn't there, where he gets knocked down. Saoirse's standing there, she's watching him doing all his heroics. He gets knocked down, and she comes up to him, doesn't she, with the sword, and you think, what's she going to do? And she grabs him and kisses him. And while they're all fighting this big creature, I love it how they can just stand in the middle of the battlefield, the only guy that they're up against,
and this monster, of course. They're all fighting the monster, aren't they? Because they're all scared of that.
They're fighting the monster, but
so it's a good distraction. So they then join forces and fight off, and Eric and his group, then they sort of suddenly come from behind, and that's when he comes up, picks up the baby, and he's off, taken to Bad Mortar.
There's a little bit. It was worth mentioning when Willow he stumbles out of the castle, crying, and there's a lovely little Warwick Davis moment where you really feel for him.
You do,
you really get that your heart sort of really aches at that point.
And also the way Val Kilmer sort of says to him,
Val Kilmer and
Willow,
Joanna Whalley.
Let's ride, and
they kind of both rush up to him. Both the actors that when they approach Warwick Davis, they look distressed because Warwick Davis.
It's really cute, isn't it? That bit.
It was cute,
really
and they're there together at that point, and then off they go.
They all head. They camp. They start building a camp outside and ready to siege the castle. And Bad Mortar comes out on the old ramparts, doesn't she? And she's like, "This isn't an army. You're all pigs," like this. And she's like, And this to me as a kid, this was one thing that I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is like the most horrible thing in this film, when they're all transforming into pigs, and they're like, you see one guy's lying on the floor and he's like, the back half of him is like a pig's rear, and like his face is all going, and man, that did
the noises
as a kid,
well, it freaked me out as a kid. I tell you, it was terrifying to see them just suddenly all changing, mutating. And
she even turns social, doesn't she? She says, "Mother, don't." She's like, "You're no pig.
Daughter of mine."
She gets her. But Roselle, who is, I think she's a goat at this point, isn't she?
Yeah,
she's been transformed into a goat at this point. She says, "Quick, Willow, quick! Hide, protect yourself." And so he gets the wand out and starts chanting this, protection spell, and he doesn't transform into a pig. Then we get this really good scene, don't we? This is like we were saying, this new tech, they come up with this, what they call morphing technology. And this
Dennis Moran
this was a really good combination of how they did
he suggested this,
yeah.
Because Ron Howe didn't know much about this, because old Dennis Moran, he said to Ron, look, we could use this technique. Let's try it. Let's do it. And Ron's like, okay. And he did not expect to see what was coming.
No. And it was a combination of things, wasn't it? It was partly props that they would. So there's a bit where there's an ostrich head that comes out and that sort of thing. So they built
out of the
props. And they kind of made that sort of concertina out, didn't they? And then that sort of
animatronics
and puppets, but then they also use the CG around it, didn't it? And you see it going through like tortoise and an ostrich and a tiger bit comes out, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and it transforms into a woman, and it was a really good sequence. It
was great. Film. It was well lit in the space as well, so it wasn't as obvious that it was CGI. And that the sequence holds up nicely.
It does.
Now.
It
looks good. Yeah,
it does look good. And poor Willow's thinking, he keeps opening his eyes, doesn't he? Seeing what's sort of happening, and she's going, "Willow, help me, Willow!" It's like, so you're like, oh. But he transforms her back, and it turns out that she's actually a 70-year-old woman now. And
she's been on that island for quite a long time.
Been on that island for a long time, because she tells them earlier in the film she's a young, beautiful woman.
And Falcon says, "Quickly change her,
get her, change her back." It's just things like that.
And then Roselle, she transforms everybody back. We don't see the changes. Suddenly, everybody's back to being normal again.
Yes,
and they have a plan to get into the castle.
Like,
Willow has some
big ditches, isn't they? And cover them over. That looks like the tents are covering them over, and they're all on their horses in these ditches. And so Willow and Roselle are standing there, so they're saying, we're powerful sorcerers. You must, we will destroy you. Chance to what's the word? Surrender. We'll give you the chance to surrender. And they send out the horses, and as they've opened their gates and they're coming out, then all the troops come out, and it's probably
get
wouldn't
into
happen.
the castle, blah blah blah. Fights start, don't they?
Fights.
Eric's there.
Yes, Eric gets killed by General Kale.
Yeah,
and I always thought Eric had quite an interesting sword, didn't he? He had this sword that was kind of
gauntlet
like molded
sword,
onto a gauntlet that would just, it would be.
That was fascinating as well.
I don't know if that would be a good thing or not. Do you know what I mean? Would that be?
Well, there's a certain flexibility you have when you hold the hilt.
Yeah, exactly. You can move your hand.
If that is properly locked onto your hand, I guess you can't be disarmed, can you? So there's probably advantages. But I've seen weapons like that where you get a shorter version. And in fact, the sword gets broken, doesn't it? By General Kell. And Kilmer's taken it.
That's right. Eric gets killed, doesn't he? And Kilmer sees this and then goes and grabs that sword off of him and as a fight with General Kell. That sword does get broken, like you say. He stabs it. He gets stabbed in a bit of wood, doesn't he? And he just goes cuts it.
Yeah.
But he ends up managing to kill him, as we'd expect the hero to do.
And there are some really interesting armor. If you watch, there are moments when you see people in armor. It looks absolutely fascinating. That I'd quite like to go back and look at in more detail. But because there's a whole myriad of influences on the design. There's sort of Japanese style heads, helmets. And then but there's also a whole
helmet is quite interesting, isn't it? It's quite big and wide, isn't it?
And there's definitely medieval English influences there as well. It'd be interesting to see some of those designs.
Meanwhile, in the castle, Bab Morda's doing some ceremony, isn't she? She's setting out all this sort of candles and bowls
ritual
of blood, and she's got the baby on an altar, and wants to send this baby to
black leather.
yeah, I know, to tidy it right up, didn't they?
Yeah,
they did make an animatronic baby that was in a lot of this, so it wasn't like the poor little baby was put through a load of grief. But they head up. Saoirse goes up with Roselle to confront her and Willow. Confront her, and that's the bit where Saoirse goes in. She kills a couple of the guard or the. I don't know what they were. They were like
clears the way. There was kind of like a priest there or something, wasn't there? Dark priest.
And then she gets thrown against. You think she's going to hit some spikes, but then Roselle stops her, and she falls to the ground. So it's then down to Roselle and Bab Morda, and they have a great wizardy fight, don't they?
Yeah, it's the forerunner to Gandalf and Saruman.
Yeah, and they're throwing each other around. There's a bit where Roselle's like, no, like this, and throwing her around the room. And like, oh, that is so brilliant, so funny.
And one burns the other and one freezes the other, and there's this whole kind of elemental aspect to wizardry that you often see with fantasy. And they have this fight, but ultimately we know that it's going to come down to Willow. Exactly.
An old Roselle gets knocked out, doesn't she? She gets injured and gets
there's a bit of punchy. There's some fisticuffs and some strangling and some,
that's it.
It's quite vicious.
Really gets into it, doesn't it? Yeah, it's good. It's good. I thought it was quite good. And meanwhile, Willow is sort of sneaking in the room, isn't he, to get the baby off the altar?
Yeah.
Like a cauldron thing get turned into, it suddenly comes alive and is chasing about, and he has to push it out the window, and he gets the baby and runs off. And then when Bab Morda's sort of, she says to him, put that baby back on that altar, and it's like, and there's a great line where he's sort of just like, you silly old hag or something.
It's really raw. It was like a 17-year-old boy would say it, isn't it? It's like
and then he tries to convince her that he's a powerful wizard and he's going to send her into, and this is where his tricks come into play, isn't it? His old pig trick.
Well, he's has he thrown the acorn before that?
He tries to throw the acorn to start with.
Because he's got these magic acorns that when you throw them, they hit a surface, it turns it to stone.
Yes,
which is pretty powerful, if you ask me. Yeah,
and she catches one, doesn't she? And I like that bit where her arm sort of turns to stone, and she's got. She turns it back,
asserts her magic, and that
bit at the end there, where she sort of just like shakes off all the sort of dust.
Yeah,
thought,
Jean Marsh, who plays Bad Morda. She is a classic villain. Yeah, I mean, she's great at playing villains. She plays the baddie in Return to Oz, the one that takes our heads off.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
really terrifying. I mean, she's really good at playing bad characters, and at this point where she just kind of flicks off the stone.
I know I like that bit.
You are a hardcore bitch.
Yeah. And is that the extent of your power?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to send the baby into a realm where
Willow's doing his trick, isn't he?
You're no wizard. And then he just does his little flick of his, and the baby's gone. She's like, "What? Where's the baby gone?"
And it's conceivable because she's probably feeling out with her magic. Where would this baby have disappeared to?
And quite conveniently, because he'd set up all the ritual and so on, as she's then trying to do some sort of magic, a bolt of lightning comes down, doesn't it, and hits her and starts to sucks her into this realm where she was,
as it would the baby if the baby had been there. Yeah,
exactly. So it backfires on her, and she gets sent back into this terrible
realm, wherever it is she's going
to. And Roselle's like, "Where's the baby?" And he's like, "It was just my little vanishing pig trick."
Yeah.
I love that.
Willow, yeah, it's hilarious, that bit.
Dear. Yeah. But it's like every good Hollywood film should have. It's got a happy ending. The baby stays with Saoirse and Mad Mardigan. They're obviously going to get married. They've all brushed up clean and tidy at the end now, aren't they? They're all looking pristine and she's got beautiful golden red head, red hair, sort of holding the baby, and it's
Saoirse, and they're all looking happy, and
I think the thing for me, this is such an enjoyable film, isn't it? It's you've got to go into it with a sort of attitude of, this is a bit of fun, fantasy, family film. You get everything in there, don't you? You get adventure, chases, you get sword fighting, magic, bit of romance, some sensitive moments,
there's
camaraderie.
There's so some deep underlying inspiring things. So it's the smaller person, the weaker person overcomes evil. Good defeats evil, and you're rooting for the underdog a lot of the time in this film. All the way along. You want Willow to win, or you want Mad Mardigan to overcome the hordes of the army. You want their love to win through, Saoirse, and there's a lots of you're building lots of hope and connection.
Absolutely,
that's what a lot of modern TV lacks. That connection don't have. And the thing is, right, this film isn't afraid to lay it on thick with a palette.
No,
you've just got to let them do it to you. You've just got to let it wash over you. You've got to submerge yourself in a Willow fun pool and swim, otherwise you will just drown.
And I mean, as we mentioned very near the beginning, the music for me, one of the real amazing strengths of this film is the music. James Horner, this whole, I don't know how he's done it, but he's managed to make it kind of ethereal. He's made it heroic. The whole thing really works so well, and it's always something that when I hear that, when I first start playing, the film, and you hear that, at the beginning, it's like, oh my God, that's a real, really brings you into it, doesn't it? And
it really does.
The memories that, I'm probably massively on the nostalgia train here with this film, but it is so good, you know, the
Yeah.
music and, you know, everything about it. It's just got a nice feel about it, hasn't it? You know.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, at the time, it had sort of lukewarm responses.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I
It
think
still made a bit of a profit, didn't it?
it
But it
made
wasn't.
it made 100 million
Oh, did it?
profit.
It still made
in
some.
the
It
end.
still made money, but not as much as they were expecting. You know,
Yeah,
I think they were thinking of
and they
another
had
Star Wars
yeah.
type thing. You know.
Well, they had wanted to do a trilogy,
Yeah.
and you know, in fact, another 3 films. And Lucas had the
Yeah.
ideas, and he actually collaborated with Michael Moran or something like that, who then
Wrote some
goes on to
books,
write
didn't they?
3 books,
Yeah.
a series.
But
Which
I don't think that Lucas had. I don't think he had as much involvement in the books as he wanted. You know, and I think he was a bit disappointed by the books. You
well,
know.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a concept that would have got out of his control. He wouldn't have sat down and write those books
No.
with him.
No.
You know,
No.
but his name is emblazoned across the books as the
Yeah.
main writer.
Yeah.
You know,
Story probably. Yeah. The
yeah.
story.
Well, I mean,
Concepts.
yeah.
Mm.
So but they were thinking about making this into something bigger. So the lore
Yes.
was there, and
Yeah.
actually the film was written into a book, and a lot more lore was added apparently,
Right.
which might
Okay.
I'd sort of be interested to read. And it's a fun sort of fascinating world. I mean, as a film as well, it hugely benefited from VHS releases, multiple releases.
Yes. And I think you're right about when you said earlier, there's almost, it's almost got like a little cult following of probably people of our age. You know, we probably look back on that very fondly as a really nice film at the time. And you know, you do. I have such fond memories of it. I always enjoy watching it.
But it comes from a very particular era, doesn't it? When there are other films like Legend.
Yes. Krull. Yeah,
Krull,
you know, some other really sort of
bit very culty, questionable films.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, just pure fun, and
exactly.
You know,
just enjoyable.
It was great, and of course, interestingly, at the time, the writer was Bob Dolman. Okay, now he has been brought back on board with Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilms. They get the rights to Willow. So obviously they're making the new TV series. Bob Dolman is heading up that project.
Brilliant. Oh well, that's good then.
That's the connection to this film, to the new series, which is coming out in a few weeks, you know, is there. It's just a question of how much influence he would have had in the writing process.
I know.
So
unfortunately, it's you know, it's been a bit hit and miss, isn't it, with Disney, how they've taken some of these things forward. We've had some good and some bad, haven't we?
Yeah.
You know, we're enjoying the Andor stuff. That's been good.
Yeah.
The Mandalorian has been good, but then there's been Book of Boba Fett, which was really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, She-Hulk, they've got hold of that. You know, She-Hulk was appalling.
Well, you know, unfortunately, there's a couple of warning signs with this new show coming up.
Yeah.
If you can read on Wiki that they've had the first director they got had to pull out, the second director they got had to pull out, the third director they got has come in, he's relatively inexperienced British director who hasn't done a lot. So I just hope that hasn't created you know, discontinuity between you know, production the creation of it. So we'll see. And it doesn't look as if it's not focused on necessarily directly on Willow, although it's called Willow. There's quite a cast of sort of younger actors who are the main team in this new one. And Willow might, I don't know what sort of part he's going to play.
Hopefully he's not going to get too sidelined.
Yeah, we'll see. But you know, I
anyway,
loved the film.
The original film,
classic.
Highly recommended.
That happens will ever take anything away from that.
No, that's very true. That's very true. And it's good because it is, you know, 40 years ago, well, 30 years ago. You know, brilliant. Anyway, that's get out and see it, you know, or watch on Disney Plus. It's on Disney Plus. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. We always love talking about our old nostalgic films like Willow. We hope you've enjoyed what we've said. If you do, obviously, please subscribe. We'd love more subscribers. Any likes and comments would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, we'll see you again soon.